joining me now to talk more about what is happening here in New Orleans at the Southern Baptist Convention. Pastor Brad Jurkovich, who is the pastor at Bossier First Baptist in actually Bossier, Louisiana. Brad, welcome back to the program.
Great, glad to be here, Tony. Appreciate all you do, my friend.
So let me very quickly, since we're talking about the indictment of former President Donald Trump, your thoughts on that and its implication with evangelical voters?
Well, obviously, I think you referenced it a moment ago. The reality of it is they've just been after this president time and time and time again. So, again, I think a lot of people are scratching their heads going, at some point, what's the credibility here with these kinds of assaults? I think a lot in the evangelical world, they have stood strong with him. They believe, look, he followed through with what he said he would do.
Yeah, he did.
So I'm not saying that that's just the end-all, be-all, but I do think there's a lot that go, man, you know what he'll do.
Well, there were 50 congressional investigations into the Trump administration and into President Trump.
Yeah.
You know, you had the Russian hoax. You had
Yes.
Ukraine.
That's
you had
right.
all of these, and
Yep.
they came up completely empty-handed.
That's what I'm saying. I think there's just a credibility issue with all these assaults. I'm not saying that people can't be, objective and rational with that, but it does come a point where, like, wow, again?
Right. Well, and I think there's probably at the forefront of this is the idea that there's a double standard.
Correct. A lot of people see that. They just look at all these other absolutely open people to prosecution. It's like nothing's been done.
Yeah.
So now we're going to go after this gentleman who's, leading in polls or whatever it is in an election coming up.
So let's talk about votes, talking about elections here in New Orleans, Southern Baptist. What issues are before the Southern Baptist? How many are here from the Baptist churches across the country?
So we've got, I want to say it's 12 to 13,000 messengers who showed up in New Orleans. So they have an annual meeting every June. It's in New Orleans this year. So that was a pretty good jump from about, a month and a half ago where there was about 5,000. So, but there was no one running against the incumbent SBC president. Well, there was a gentleman who put his name out there willing to be nominated named Mike Stone, pastor in Georgia, ran a couple years ago, won on the first round, but lost in the runoff by 300 votes when there were 16,000 people in Nashville. And Mike Stone has just been willing to let his name be nominated again. So he was nominated today. That vote came down. It's an uphill battle. It's close. There's a lot of issues with all that, but that's the biggest vote right now.
So what's really what are the issues at the forefront this year with the Southern Baptist Convention?
Well, again, you're wanting some clarity on things, Tony. You got the largest, Protestant denomination in the country. Clarity. For example, where are we going when it comes to female pastors? That's a big issue, regardless of the issues that are happening with Rick Warren's church and him, wanting all that to happen. But that's a big deal. Mike Stone's been clear on that. I'm not saying the other incumbent president is unclear, but there's just a drift going on there. There's also this sexual abuse task force reform group that's been put together, and it's inserted a lot of uncertainty. What's credibly accused and how people have been using that, Tony, within Southern Baptist life. A lot of Southern Baptists are deeply concerned about it, and the millions of dollars of church money that has been given to this being used on a law firm that clearly was pro-LGBTQ. Why are we using that? All these things have been built up over the last couple of years.
So let's talk about some of the issues. The resolutions usually tell a lot about what's on people's mind. Immigration, one of those issues, and of course the whole LGBTQ agenda. Yeah. It's become more aggressive in terms of this indoctrination that we're seeing. Is that something we're seeing some significant pushback on from the Southern Baptist Convention?
I think there's a lot of pastors who are doing what they can. I'm not sure we've been as clear as we can be in Southern Baptist life about, pushing back in the culture. I think we can be much stronger, much more focused. I think there's been some mixed messages bubbling up, percolating in Southern Baptist life, where it's, this is their identity. As long as they don't act out on this, we've got to be sensitive to this community rather than simply calling them to Christ. And here's what Scripture calls us to be and about. So there's just a lot of Southern Baptists concerned about that. But again, Tony, as you know, it's a full-on assault in American life right now. And we need to be clearer on it. We need to be stronger on it. I think a lot of pastors are very, very concerned. A lot of churches are. So we're trying, but we feel like there's been some uncertainty on by some leaders who've really accommodated the culture.
Well, we're up against a break, but when we come back, I want to talk about some of those pastors who are stepping forward in their local communities. You being one of them, actually holding last week. You had a story hour.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And pushing back on this whole drag queen story hour, trying to indoctrinate our children. I think it's getting outside the four walls of the church, taking the truth and confronting the darkness.
Yes, sir.
It has to happen. So we're going to talk about that on the other side of the break, and also what pastors need to do to challenge their congregations to be more engaged. Have we reached a tipping point where people are saying enough is enough and the pendulum is swinging back?
Tony, I think so. I hope so. You see these signs percolating across the country. This trans movement, I'm with you. I put out on social media some thoughts about when I saw that flag from our White House. I just was like, my goodness, Lord. They literally are assaulting our Christian foundation. They don't care about this country the way you and I have grown to value it and grew up with. It's a full-on assault, and I think people are seeing that more and more, and they're going to take a stand, and they are, on multiple fronts. And they need to. I remember, Tony, years ago, do you remember when Ellen came out and said, yep,
Right.
I'm gay, on the cover of People magazine, whatever. I remember being in North Carolina. I was in a grocery store, saw the magazine cover. It was a big deal. It was a big story. And I just asked the lady who was at the cash register, and I said, ma'am, I'm just curious your thoughts. What do you think about that? She said, people can do whatever they want to do. I said, okay, ma'am. Well, what happens when they start teaching your kids all that? And she said, oh, no, don't you touch my kids. I said, ma'am, where do you think this is going? I mean, that was in the mid to late 90s.
And I think that's people are not connecting those dots.
They're not.
But now that we're here at this point,
That's right.
they are saying, enough is enough. And pastors are stepping forward. Talk a little bit about what prompted you to do the storybook hour that you did last week.
Well, I saw Kirk Cameron out there doing some story hours. You've seen these drag queen story hours and all these kinds of crazy things. And I saw Kirk Cameron doing that. Another pastor friend of mine in Northwest.
So did you dress up like Moses or something?
That would have been an awesome outfit. At any rate, I'll do that next time, Tony.
Okay.
But, he challenged me. He said, Pastor Brad, why don't you out there with the Conservative Baptist Network do something to challenge pastors all across the country to do that. Go to your local library. So, Tony, I did. I just walked over there or went over to the library, walked into the office. I said, I'm a pastor at First Baptist Bossier. And I said, I'd like to do a story hour. She said, well, that'd be fine. And I said, I'm going to read one of these books from the Brave Book series, which is out there. The newest one that I just saw from Kirk Cameron was Pride Comes Before the Fall. There's other incredible ones. And I said, I'd like to do this. She said, well, sure, we'd love to do it. I said, well, you know what? You got a brand new library being built here in Bossier. What if we could get Kirk Cameron to come here and we do one there and when the new library opens this fall? She said, oh, we'd love to do that. You never know until you try, Tony. Right. And I think people are hungry for that. And I got more response. I mean, we had a good attendance that day, but the broader response of going, oh my gosh, way to go, Pastor Brad, for going out there. And the kids loved it. The families loved it. I think the library was blown away that we'd be that intentional. So I would encourage pastors. They have much more influence than they realize. And there's incredible resources that are engaging, that speak truth. It's amazing.
So Pastor Brad, those who say, you know what, I just don't want the conflict.
Yeah.
This idea of live and let live, that was a lie, just like every other lie that the left has sold.
Yeah.
Ultimately, they're coming for the truth.
They are.
They want to extinguish the truth and the messengers of truth.
Correct. Look, the reality of it is, Tony, the world, the lost world, who looks at us, who follow this one who died on a cross, was buried, and rose from the dead, they already think we're foolish. So everything, we walk in light, not in darkness anymore. But my point is, they don't want to have conflict. Well, at some point, when you say Jesus is the only way to heaven, there's going to be conflict. So now you're simply addressing all the biblical truth out there. And yes, there's going to be conflict. But you know what? People are looking for courage. That's one of the big things here in the Southern Baptist Convention. I asked one of the great leaders, Tony, of the conservative resurgence back in the 80s, what was the issue? Was it this issue, that issue? I thought it was an issue. He looked at me and said, no, man, it was courage.
Yeah.
That really is what it was.
It's what it boils down to on every level.
Every level.
Is courage. Let's talk very, very quickly. Just got a couple minutes left. Tonight, there's a panel discussion.
Yeah.
I'm a part of that. This is the Conservative Baptist Network hosting this event tonight. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so Standing for Freedom Center, Conservative Baptist Network, hosting this event. Twilight's Last Gleaming. The featured guest is former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. And then this panel that you guys are a part of, Tony, which is fantastic. I mean, Pastor Tom Askell, Jack Graham's going to be there from Prestonwood, and so forth. You're going to be there in these panels. This is an opportunity to bring clarity. I think, you know what's funny? Southern Baptists in general, we're the ones that brought religious liberty, the very concept and principle, to America. And are we content to lose it? Of course not. And so I think having you there, a part of it, we've already got hundreds coming tonight. It's going to be at 7 o'clock at the Hilton. It's an awesome opportunity for people to engage, learn, and grow. I'm sure it'll be recorded and shared later. Thank you for being a part of that, Tony. Thank you for what you're doing. Southern Baptists need to be on the front lines of this, man. And so we're doing all we can. This is going to be a cool night to celebrate that as well.
Well, we appreciate your leadership in bringing conservatives
You bet.
within the Southern Baptist Convention to bring that, kind of recasting a vision,
Yes, sir.
a biblical vision
Yes, sir.
of truth, and courageously defending
Yeah.
and proclaiming that truth.
Yeah.
Brad, always good to see you.
Great to see you, Tony. Thanks
And
for all
we
you do,
will
my
see
friend.
you tonight.
You bet.